All right, so I'm going to take a look. This is a little bit of a nostalgic show. We're going to take a look back at the last 8 years, maybe 10 years. Maybe we'll go all the way back to when I started in real estate in 2005. I've been in real estate, I say, pretty much my entire life. So it started, my dad is an interior decorator. He built his own homes. He built 3 homes that I lived in as we grew up. I watched the process, the home building process as a child growing up. We lived on plywood floors before we got actual flooring. I played on construction sites when I was a little girl. It has been imprinted in my DNA. So when I help people who are building homes, I know and understand. Now, I'm not a builder, and things have changed. Technology has changed, certainly over the years since my dad built 3 homes. But at the same time, I have a lot of pride and I have some understanding of the process. And I know as your real estate agent, I know there are some things that you have to consider when building a home that will be part of that home when it comes time for you to sell it down the line. Home builders have been through an absolute lot, so much over the last 20 years. We started back in 2008 and 9 with a really bad crash in the real estate industry. So 2008, 2009, we had a crash in the industry, and it was a true crash. And from that time, so many people, they lost their homes. Many builders went out of business. I've seen a lot of heartache. And I remember the days back in 2008, 2009, when the home values went down so dramatically. But if we look at what happened in 2008 and 2009, when so many people purchased homes that they could not afford, that's really the bottom line. And lenders, there were a lot of unscrupulous lenders who are now out of business, to be honest. There are a lot of people who went to jail because they basically stole the American dream. And it took 10 years or more for a lot of people to get back on their feet after losing their home. So we've had a huge rebuilding during my career, during the last 20 years. The rebuilding of the real estate industry, honestly, I have lived it. I have seen it. I've grown with it. My business grew. It has changed so much. The market recovery has been ongoing since the real estate crisis of 2008. It was not just a real estate crisis. In 2008, it was a total breakdown. It was a financial crisis. And we have seen continued growth in the real estate market, certainly from 2015 forward. So we had a few years in there where life came to a bit of a standstill. Homes were on the market, I'm not kidding you, for a year, 2 years or more, and we didn't even bat an eye. Today, if a home is on the market for longer than a week, we think there's something wrong. That's a dramatic change, an absolutely dramatic change. So I remember back in 2008, 2009, people were losing their homes, or if you weren't losing your home, the value of your home was not what it was when you purchased it. And so there were a lot of sellers who were coming to the table. They sold their home, but the seller made no money. They lost money on that investment, and they had to bring tens or thousands of dollars to the table, and that was not easy. It wasn't easy for anyone. It was not easy for me as your real estate agent to watch you go through this financial hardship that cost you probably everything. And if you had to do bankruptcy, I learned a lot during the 2008-2009 financial crash. The good news is that was the lowest of the low. The good news is from there, we kind of rose up, and a lot of changes happened in the real estate industry. Lenders had to make a ton of changes to the business. back in 2008, 2009, actually from 2005 to 2008, people were buying homes with no money down. They didn't need to have the best credit in the world. Subprime lending was a thing. And so it was very, very dark times for people, because then they realized, oh shoot, I do have to make this payment. Oh shoot, I may be forced out of my home and on the street because I stopped making payments, because I'm not working. Again, it was a really dark time. So then in 2015, 16, we've had some time to recover. You still remember the financial scars that we felt back in 2008 and 2009. I certainly still remember them, because I remember helping people through the process and realizing that, okay, I'd like to get paid as well for the work that I was doing, but yet you have to pay me. You don't have enough money. People were maxing out credit cards. It was a dark, dark time. But thankfully, through those ashes, we were able to rebuild the industry. So the recovery post 2015 has been quite dramatic. Low interest rates, a much stronger economy, contributed to increasing property values. So then we were seeing that homes that had been on the market for a year or more were finally selling. Things were starting to move along. And thankfully, with that, we can consider, there were a lot of builders who either went out of business, stopped building altogether. So the home construction process and that whole situation where home building stopped for a segment of time is the reason why today we're 3 to 4 million homes behind on what we need in order to actually fulfill the needs of home buyers. So we've seen a lot of the trend of people wanting to live rather than in the suburbs, wanting to live in center cities. So we saw Cincinnati as a great example of that. The revitalization of our downtown has created an area that is appealing to so many people. And so we've seen a lot of that happening throughout all of the bigger cities in the country. But Cincinnati has really flourished over the course of the last 20 years. A lot has happened, but it was like a gradual growth over a good 10-year period. And then COVID-19 happened. And the real estate industry specifically was turned on its head once again, because all of the things that I knew, all of the experience that I had in real estate leading up to that point changed. And we kept trying to find normal. We couldn't find it. Normal didn't exist, because when I started in real estate, people would get a 30-year loan and you'd stick with it. But we saw over the years interest rates get lower and lower and lower. I went ahead and I did some statistics about the average mortgage rate over the years. And I just started with in 2013, that's when those rates started to plummet. Drop. And then we're not even talking about COVID yet. But in 2013, the mortgage interest rates were 4.5%. Then in 2015, it went to 3.9%. And I know on this radio show, I would say it is not going to go any lower than that. And I'll be darned, it did. 2016, we were at 3.6% for a mortgage rate. 2017, it increased a little bit to 3.9. 2018, it went up to 4.5. Then in 2019, it went down. And in 2020, good old pandemic, the mortgage interest rate went to 2.8%. That was the average, 2.8%. And then if we fast forward to today, we're at 6.5%. So if we look at 6.8% and then we look at 6.5%, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what is happening? How in the world can we afford to buy a home? Well, the average interest rate, if you look back at 20 to 30 years, is 7%. And I know a lot of old timers are going to say, well, I remember when it was 16%. I would not be able to sell a house today if the mortgage interest rate was 16%. But somehow, homes still got sold. there are a lot of people that are holding on and have refinanced. The word refinance early in my career was not something that happened. But boy, starting in 2013 and 14, how many times did you refinance the mortgage on your house? Back when I got into the business in 2004, 2005, people were in their homes 4 to 5 years and they would make a move. And historically, you'd buy a starter home for $100,000, then you'd sell it, you'd make a little bit of money, then you'd buy the next home. And so as you moved out of that lower priced home, that gave the opportunity for a new first-time home buyer to move into that lower-priced home, and then the cycle would go on and on. Well, when the real estate crash happened and the market started, there were a lot of lower-priced homes available back in 2008, 2009. A lot of those homes were not in great condition. I will be honest, I went into so many homes because people were going through such financial hardship back in that day. They would take everything, including light bulbs. It was kind of like the Grinch that stole Christmas. They would take all of the light bulbs and the appliances, and they would rip things out of the walls and try to steal the copper and all of those things. And it left a lot of homes in really, really bad condition. So that was heartbreaking, to say the least, on so many levels. But as time has gone on and people have started to recover, a lot of things have changed. Today, you will be hard-pressed to find a home for $100,000. I'm not saying that they don't exist. In the city of Cincinnati, we have homes for $90,000, $100,000, but they're not in the best of condition. And they may have some foundation issues, or they may be not in the greatest part of the city. That is difficult because there aren't a lot of homes available for first-time home buyers. The average price of a home now in Cincinnati is close to $300,000. Can you imagine? And so I'm being that 60, almost 60, not quite yet 60-year-old woman who is thinking about, you know, back in my day, I could buy a first-time home for $100,000, and it was livable, and it was a good home to start a family. Today, that's not the case. And so the average home in Cincinnati being at $285,000, again, close to $300,000. And then if we look at the mortgage interest rates and how they've changed so much, and people in their mind, they're thinking, well, okay, if the mortgage interest rate is 4%, and I can afford a home at 4% for $200,000, how much of a home can I afford at 6%? Most likely, you can afford a home for $150,000. And again, finding a livable home for $150,000 is very difficult. So it does make it a little bit more difficult for those first-time home buyers because a lot of people have to basically step up. And that's another reason why the average age of our home buyer has increased to 27 or 28 years old. Because people in their early 20s will struggle to be able to afford a property.